Mask off. 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 You've been tuned in to Mask Off, where conversation will rule the nation on face-to-face basis when we blast off. It's real on the asphalt, on the turf of the court. Yeah, we here for the sport, so take your mask off so I can hear your ass talk. Let me hear you explain. Hold the thoughts on your brain. Is your ass smart? Spit facts and real talk. I need that shit from the street that make you think real deep and take a long walk. This podcast is hella lit with my man JD Fence and Skizzo Blizzo.
What it do, family? Welcome back to the building. Mask Uncovered Podcast. You know what it is, man. JD Fence, man. JAYDFENCE on all platforms. And definitely got to make sure y'all always checking out our sponsorship, man. Bananas Liquors. You know what I mean? So, but we got a couple of people in the house. I want y'all to introduce yourselves.
Oh, I'm Nikki.
That's it, Nikki. Where you from, Nikki? You want to tell the people where you from?
I'm originally from Tennessee, but now I live here in Boston.
Okay. Who else we got in the house?
I'm Stan. It's a pleasure to be back with Mask Uncovered and out of Roxbury. You know, nickname Hood Clinician. Do a lot of family work in the city, and I'm glad to be back with you, Jay.
Hood Clinician.
Yes.
What does that stand for?
I have my master's in social work, and I work with a lot of the families that I can relate to based on the fact that I came from the same culture, the same part of the city they come from.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to definitely look at interventions that I call it like this here. I'm confrontational with empathy, but we get the job done.
Gotcha.
Okay. Like that. My man's on one tonight. And y'all watch the podcast, so y'all should definitely know my man Big Stan, as always. So you know, this is what we do. We haven't done it in a while, man. I'm gonna do a little drink of the day before we kick it off into our topic tonight, man. Can you pass me some of this little juice that we got over here? So now I've been battling with the idea, the name and the title. I'm gonna get one of those bottles. Do y'all remember what we came up with here?
Dry goose.
Yeah, this is gonna be a little dry goose for y'all at home, man. So quick and easy, man. Yo, shout out to my man Skizzo. See, shout out to my man Skizzo. Get better, man.
Feel better,
I know
man.
you took a little downing fall, but we're gonna get back to it. And at home, you can do your own little measurements, man. Make sure you're doing it how way you like to do your drink. I don't really drink the light, but I'm gonna give it a shit out tonight. Get a little bit of the little chicken coop in there. Then we're gonna get a little bit of the little Ginger ale. You can pick your own Ginger. We prefer that Canada Dry over here. A little bit more, take the woo side
You
of
need
that.
to know you have to do more pineapple juice.
Then you gotta tap it off. You see the Chef Boyardee over here. And always gotta give it the little ghetto stir.
Make sure your hands are clean, though.
I just came from the bathroom.
No,
You gotta make sure you go to the
I'm talking
bathroom.
about the people at home.
No, I'm saying you gotta make sure your hands are dirty. Oh no, don't do that. Just give it a little.
All right, say it and mean it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see what it do. Not bad, especially for some light liquor. Probably won't see me play with that too much tonight. But hey, listen, that's the drink of the day, man. Make sure y'all subscribe, like the channel, and comment on that drink of the day. And if it gets you tore up from the floor up. But without further ado, man, we kicking it tonight, man. We was sitting down, had a little cookout, and we was all vibing and what have you, and came up with a topic that we was like, you know what, this would be nice to just throw it on camera and get some feedback, but also just speak our mind real quick on what's it like being black in Boston these days. Obviously, Nikki's from Tennessee, so she's not going to have a whole lot to say about, growing up, but it'd be a good thing because growing up in Tennessee, I've been seeing the vibe and being here for some odd years, and she'll explain that as she goes along. and then Big Stan, actually, being from other parts of the South too, and being, in Boston a lot of his life, and just how we feel about being black in Boston. So, ladies first. What do you?
Oh, the first topic is racism in Boston.
Okay.
I think that the racism here is worse than the racism in in the South. That's my personal experience, and also a lot of people that I've talked to experience. So that's what we can, if you want to bring that up
So,
about.
so you say racism. So, like, what type of racism did you experience in Tennessee growing up?
To be honest with you, I didn't really ever experience like someone saying, "Oh, nigga this or nigga that," or "you don't belong over here." I've never experienced that, and I grew up in a predominantly white area. So, but I can say this:
So you
like
one
I
of them
used to get
Oreos
scared.
anyway. You from the money side of the world, so you
No,
wouldn't expect.
I
Nah,
was.
I'm messing with you. But
I'm gonna say this: like, if I was to go out with a white guy, we would get looks, but it's not like That's about the most I can say the racism was. I never had anybody to call me a nigger. The Confederate flag is probably really one of the most racist things I've experienced. But I'm a new generation Southern person, so I'm a millennial, so my experience compared to my older brothers and my parents' experience is totally different. Now I know about the racism from them and what they experienced, and I've seen on paperwork what some of the racism that happened to my family because I had to do research for certain things and I've seen some of the things, but I've never personally experienced someone calling me like a nigger or saying you don't belong here. But like we were speaking earlier about vibes, how or your parents done told you, okay, like stay away from over this place in that area or whatever, but nothing me personally. Right?
so racism exists in Tennessee because of hearsay, doing some research, conversations at cookouts, things of that nature. But you haven't experienced it yourself. So that's the
Other than
Tennessee.
like looks, right?
Right.
Like, well, I'm not gonna say in all of Tennessee. I'm gonna just say from the area that I'm from. And like I said, I come from
Where I'm from.
a small
Okay.
town where everybody know everybody,
Okay.
and then my family was kind of prominent in that area too of my father's side. So it's like you got that, but I'm not gonna say there is no racism and nobody ever experienced it. Compared to here, I recently experienced racism done to me. Right?
Okay, that's where I was going. Okay,
hmm
so now what happened here in Boston that you say racism exists?
I've experienced it in my professional life, and I'm not gonna.
No, you don't have to
Yeah,
expose what job
yeah,
you at, but like
yeah.
what type of racism? What did your boss, did a coworker, did somebody say some
I think
words
I'm
out of?
gonna leave it at I experienced in the work environment. You know.
Can you say what took place? Like as far as like okay, just a bad feeling, or something actually happened
Something
to you?
actually happened.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
something
And
actually
we don't
happened.
need to throw nobody
Yeah,
under the bus.
yeah,
What happened? We get off of that. All right,
yeah.
Stan, and that was just a little intro to you. Stan, what you got to say?
I think racism is man-made. I think it's one where people who are intimidated or impacted by somebody else based on the color of their skin, and then like when you provide a baby with the fundamentals of how to be able to function. Unfortunately, people were provided with the information on how to continue to perpetuate racism in a manner where it comes with some level of false privilege.
hmm
And in that place of false privilege, in my experience, it's like your ice water is better than my ice water, but we're drinking the same ice water. But because it comes from your area, um, it's somewhere along the way supposed to be more dominant. So when I look at how South Boston High School and what made my parents think going to South Boston High I was going to get a better education than education in my own community. The false narrative that they've created that we apply to, that intentionality. Some of the white people that I grew up with, their parents breeded them on making sure that you're going to run this and you're going to be this. And intentionality, that was not the same message that was given to many of us coming from the inner city, that this is a better opportunity. What's wrong with the opportunity I already got? What's wrong with what I'm doing right now? But they created a narrative that seemed that created this myth that something's better on the other side that I'm missing. And so there's a lot of tension, a lot of animosity, and being a survivor of busing, being a survivor of being traumatized by racism. We talk about reparation. A lot of those people from the 70s when I went to school, substance abuse issues, most of us didn't get a good education. And that was regardless if you were black or white. We all lost. No, there was no win factor during that time. Everybody was impacted by that in a negative way.
Now, do you think it was by choice, or wasn't that actually something that the state had issued down? Like, okay, as far as busing, that all right, there's certain areas now going to the school. It's not like they had a choice. Okay, you could stay and go to the burn.
You know what it is? We had a choice.
I don't know. I wasn't around.
We had a choice.
I ended up
but
later,
the local school that was in my community, vicariously through systemic, oppressive, discriminatory languages, it was almost like our family members wanted us to have something better. And what we had, we devalued and found that there was more value on the other side of the bridge. And now, looking back on it, and then looking at how our community used to function. Our community functioned in a hierarchy, right? There was a tier system. So our community functioned where it was family first, right? Then there was church. Then there was community. Then there was friends, right? And it functioned like that. But if you fast forward that to where we're at right now, it's friends first, family, community, and church is no longer evolved in that equation.
Right.
So like some of those things and those ideologies that we was raised on really had a lot of us questioning who we were. It almost seemed that if I acted more like another race or another color, that means that I have a better chance of being successful. Like, why couldn't I just be successful the way I am?
Right.
And that was not promoted.
See,
and we fed into that.
I agree.
I feel like black people fail to realize we are great. We are, just being black is enough, and that we don't have to submit or adapt to the dominant culture in order to be considered great or enough. And that's one of our flaws, but that comes in part of going back to the Jim Crow laws and going back to the Willie Lynch syndrome. We think that, what they say and what they do is the best thing for us. But says who? Like, who made that rule that what they say and do is better?
Well,
right?
I was going to ask you, what did you mean by the dominant culture?
Majority.
Okay.
It's dominant majority.
Oh, all right. No, just to clear that up, because it sounds like you.
But I think sometimes we're scared to say who we consider white people the dominant culture.
Yes, we do.
We consider white people
in this state, in this country, yes.
The one with privilege, the one with access.
Yeah.
We did not find ourselves to be equal.
No.
And in that, we didn't really have a voice because we inherited how not to have a voice. And so now when you look at Generation Z, why I love this generation so much, they make it a point to say, don't tell me what to do if you're not modeling what you're asking me to do. Mm-hmm. And they question what we could not question. Mm-hmm. I tell a joke around I can remember being outside and my grandmother would say, "Come inside and give me some water." You know, right next to the refrigerator. I wish I could have had the liberty of saying, "You're next to the refrigerator, get it yourself." But that was a violation of respect.
Yes.
It's still a violation in
Yeah.
my house. I ask you to get me
And
some water. You
I
damn sure
still
don't go
think
get me
that
some
that's a
water.
violation when it, especially your grandmother. Come on, like
Yeah.
yeah. But I get what
But
you're
yeah,
saying. That if they can question their own elders in their community, they can question the dominant society,
And I
the
agree.
majority society.
I think they're
whatever you
changing the
wanna call
world.
it.
I mean, along with social media, internet and things of that nature. But definitely, like, they're changing, the work habits and things of that nature. A lot of stuff is changing because they're asking the questions of why. Like, why are we doing this? Because someone told me to do it, or someone told me this was the right thing to do. But I'm going to South Boston High myself some years after you left or what have you.
What
My
you
first
trying
year.
to say? He's older than you, but okay.
A little bit. Nah, well, I went in '87. I ain't scared to say it. I went in '87 to '91, and when I went my first year, I mean, I had already heard about the busing and all that stuff and things that was taking place, and like how they used to, try to jump people and throwing rocks and stuff at even the buses that were coming and going. But it wasn't nowhere like that with us. There were still some white folks there that were still kind of like, it reminded me like of like Happy Days, like they had the cigarettes in the sleeve of the shirt.
What's Happy Days?
Oh, that's a TV show. Wow. Oh my gosh, you don't know what
I'm
that
just
is.
trying to make sure I can relate.
I forgot. Listen, yeah, Happy Days. Wow.
Fonzie,
Google
right?
that. Fonzie, right.
Okay, I got you.
But yeah, definitely. So, I got into a little scuffle with a white male early on my freshman year, what have you, over nothing. But like he was so-called the bad kid. Like we sitting in the principal's office, what have you, and he just was like, "Yeah, I threw the first punch, what have you." I was like, "Okay." So he's like, "All right, yeah, you suspended, and like, all right, you can go back to class." I'm like, so this was something that he didn't mind doing. Like so just to think that, okay, you're going to the school with, okay, white people are going to have this advantage, or they're the better students, and like, now you're bringing in the guys from the inner city, and they're going to be the ones tearing up the school, or they're going to be the bad ones. I found it total opposite. It was like those kids from South Boston were literally the ones that were throwing stuff. I mean, blacks still had other issues, but like those white folks that we assumed or thought was going to be a different way, they were in there like badass and like setting trash cans on fire, like, just doing crazy stuff. But I see an audience member has a question.
So I just wanted to say my experience moving to Boston from the state of Maryland was a complete culture shock. Like
I agree.
I came to Boston. I went to school in Dedham. So when I got to Dedham, I identified all of Massachusetts as being like Dedham. That was all I saw in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even think, people of color were even from here. And then
Same.
when I, a roommate of mine at the time, lived in Mattapan. So then she invited me to her house for the weekend to see that there were black people here. And I remember, my first time ever walking into Mattapan Square, I was totally shocked. I remember even calling my mother like, "You're not going to believe it. There's black people here." And then, just traveling back and forth, from Dedham into Mattapan, you got a different culture. It was a clear divide of
Yes.
the have and the have not.
Yes.
But then once I got
The
into
have
the
and
working
have-nots.
field, it really, the level of racism was very high. Like I came from a culture of, where I grew up in Maryland was not too far from Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
So that population is, say, 85% African American.
Right.
So you saw a lot of the culture of, in high school, kids are, challenged to go to college, and, it was a high level of people that you knew in your graduating class. I was going to college. That's what you talked about. That's what you aspired to be. But then when I came here and I got into the working world, I was the only person of color in some organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to wonder, like, well, where are all my people?
Right.
Why am I the only one just here? And I would feel the sense of racism from the aspect of you know, the white people will smile in your face, but then they don't want to promote you.
Yes.
The white people will smile in your face, but then they will want to saddle you with someone else's work because they have a slacker and they want to give it to you.
Right.
And now you being disciplined because somebody else isn't doing their job.
Yes.
So that's how I felt, like the sense of racism here, like wow. And then when I looked into home ownership, you know, there's still people here today that live in Massachusetts where they're the first generation of their people to buy a home, and they're in their 30s. It's like, that's not normal from the culture where I came from. Like, you know, you go to college, you get married, you buy a home, you know, you either go into the working field or you own your own business or whatever it is. And it was, to me, it was a thriving environment for my people to grow. And when I came here, I felt like my growth was stunted.
Right.
Because it almost felt like an embarrassment to tell somebody that you have a college degree.
Yes.
It almost felt like you are the outsider talking about your experience of going to school when other people don't even aspire to be that or do that or know how to get there. And then I started hearing all these disparaging things about the Boston public schools. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you know, a high percentage may not graduate, a high percentage may graduate uneducated, or a high percentage may graduate and not go further than, you know, into college. And it was just like a complete culture shock. And I felt like, you know, the people that I went to high school with, you know, they ended up going to Grambling State, they ended up going to Howard University. Yes. It was just like a culture of people that wanted to move forward. And I just felt like my people here were stuck. So that was my experience of like racism here.
To piggyback off of that, I would say too, being that I used to go to spend a lot of my summers in the Maryland, D.C. area, you see a lot of influential Black people in that area. And coming here, it's like, I used to say, like, the only Black people in Boston is my family because I never seen any other Black people. And then when you see somebody that you think I would call Black, if they're from the West Indies or Africa or something like that, I just call them Black because that's what the American culture has adapted us to say, like, you're Black, right? And they would be like, no, I'm not Black. They did not want to be identified as African American whatsoever. Black, they were not that. They are so divided. It's like this, the racism here has played a part in the cultural divide amongst Black people. Yes. We're separating ourselves into individual groups because the dominant society has said that don't deal with the African Americans because they're a bunch of robbers and thieves and lazy, don't want to work and things of that nature. And then when you finally have a conversation with them and then they realize that, yo, we all the same and we ain't the bad guy, you know? So that's one of the experiences that I have here. And also, like, I know, like, I've had a time where I was supposed to get a promotion at work. I started doing the work and then they went and hired a white guy. You know, so it's like things like that happen, but they'll smile in your face. And after she did it, she came up and gave me a hug and said, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, she waited till I went out of town and then came back to tell me that she did that, you know. So I've experienced stuff like that in the work environment. And then she went and told one of the other coworkers who came to me that she didn't want a Black woman working for her. So, you know, it's like then if you make a noise about that, then you become the problem here, right? And this city is very, I'll say, like, they stick together. Like, everybody knows everybody, and they're a small community to even, like, to make your life a living hell or to let you do what you want to do, right? So it's like, how do you disturb that? But then you go at home and you look at your child and you tell him to stand up for racism, but then you at work and you experiencing it every single day. It's like this. It's like a snake sneaking up on you, the different type of racism I've experienced here and back home. Because back home, if you know that the white people don't like you, then you don't go into that certain area. Up here, they pretend like they like you. They'll be the first one to put the Black Lives Matter sign in their yard, right? But they cannot stand us. They do not want to have anything to do with us. They don't want to have nothing to do with us. So that's my experience here in Boston.
I think, you know, being black, when you develop a sense of consciousness around how to maneuver, you know, not only are you maneuvering through how to deal with what we call the microaggression. Microaggression will come across like, he's from Roxbury, he don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Boston Public Schools, he may not understand. There's a lot of violence in this area, don't bring that up. It's and then what happens is that you inhale this every day. You process this every day. And we don't really have healthy outlets because some of the same people that look like me, you know, when we bring it fast forward, you know, we talked about the field nigga and we talked about the house nigga, right?
Right.
And you know, and it's a taboo to say nigga now. But and then now it's normalized that, you know, I'm a nigga, you're a nigga, we're a nigga too. Everybody uses it. But when we factor in how do you maneuver, it's one where you begin to question everything around you. In that place of questioning everything around you, it's so easy to lose your identity because now what happens is we devalue our elderly in our community, and some of our elderly devalue our young people in the community. And we don't see the richness of how we can help each other because now that Willie Lynch is internalized, where now we're against each other. And not realizing what kind of damage that's doing, because when you look at other areas, when COVID happened, people had places where they can go. In a black home, I can't isolate in my home because it's already overcrowded. And the tension that's going on in the black community, that became just another layer of issues for us to deal with in the black community, forecasting that we haven't even dealt with none of the previous layers that we dealt with. So when looking at it, it's almost like once you identify someone that has peace in their system, they're not looking to take nothing from you. They're not looking to come up off you. You're not a lick, Vic, or come up. They really want to see you promote a betterness of yourself. It's far few and in between. So when looking at identifying those people, you got to build on them people, and them people got to build on you. And then you got to make sure you've identified people that you can feed that information to. Because talking about breaking cycles, it's just not looking to try to break the bigger picture. It's identifying the circle you're around. Because my kids are influenced, your kids are influenced. And if we have a common theme about that, we begin to protect each other, as opposed to trying to say, how can we change all black people? I'm not looking to change all black people no more. I want to make sure that the people that I can touch are influenced. And at that point, I hope that they can influence someone else.
So back to what you was mentioning about the outlet. Is there in Boston here? I have yet to run across like a group of black people that is doing something to outreach to other black people. You know, the kids and stuff like that. Like, where are those groups in Boston? I haven't experienced any of those here. I haven't experienced just any kind of unity between the black communities. It's always this group of black people. Well, I'm gonna call them what they are since they want to be identified. Like, I see the group of Haitians here, the group of Jamaicans here, and then you have your Cape Verdeans here, and then you have Black Americans here, but nobody is all together. You know what I mean? Everybody is like, everybody in these other three groups do not want to be associated with Black America in their core. You know what I mean? They're not Black Americans. So
There's a we are rich as a people,
Mhm.
but what happened? What I find about Boston is that when you identify like-minded people, there's a level of transparency that has to happen in that relationship in order for that relationship to have growth. What you'll see is that with some of, we got programs like No Books, No Balls. We got Jeffrey Bynum and a lot of the things that they did in the projects, and Mildred Haley, a lot of the things she did. We have some pioneers, but in terms of who picked the torches up and who's carrying those torches, a lot of us didn't get the opportunity to be mentored to be able to say, here's the torch, and here's the torch, and how you should carry it. So knowing that there's gaps here, instead of, I spent a lot of time filling those gaps with the traditional role models. And the traditional role models in our community was hustlers, people in and out of prison, and those became like surrogate parents to a lot of us. But now, once you recognize that that information is really not going to be able to allow my family or my grandkids to be able to build where they want to build, there's a letdown. I felt like that was a letdown. So when you go to chase your own identity and your own richness, a lot of that kind of starts with yourself. You build yourself out around reading. I built myself out around reading. I built myself out around identifying people that didn't want to take nothing from me but wanted to make deposits in my life. And I built on that. And I built on my failures. I built on my fault, things I didn't accomplish. And at that point, I think, we become what we want other people to be by being that person we want to see.
So would you say that the racism that you experienced at younger when you was getting bused to the what is called MECO system here and the racism now, what do you see as the difference between
It's the microaggression now.
Mhm.
It's the microaggression
and the
because
tone deaf? A lot of them are tone deaf too.
and then what's funny is that we have people that look just like us that have a lot of influence in the community, and I'll give you $150,000, and I just need you to keep the people that you grew up with their mouth shut. And so that way we can go ahead and get this developer in here to go ahead and develop what they need to develop. But I need you to keep these people. I'll give you another $25,000 just to keep their mouth shut. It's a lot of that has taken place. And
speaking on that, I don't mean to cut you off, but I have a really question for you. I heard, I'm not from here, but I heard like the Seaport area used to be predominantly black, and the city of Boston owns that. And when they first started developing it, it was supposed to be for black people to get the first dibs on everything. But now, even the Boston Globe did a piece on how many mortgages are at least mortgaged out to black people, and it wasn't even like 1% or something like that. So is that some of the things that like Boston experience here often? Like,
I think
if you look at the Seaport, it's predominantly white owned for everything.
When they talk about, you can tell the forecast of the city because it's a 15-year plan. And a lot of times, we minimize that Menino's presence is still active, right? And a lot of the stuff that we're living through is that we're living out his legacy.
Who is Menino? I'm sorry.
Mayor.
Rest in peace.
Okay.
Thomas
Mayor.
Mayor.
And
Passed
he,
away a few years ago.
and he had a lot of influence. But what happened is that there was some forecasts on the wall because during the same time of the crack epidemic and where they was criminalizing a lot of the activity for black people that needed help, properties during that time were a lot cheaper. And so as much as they gave us an opportunity to sell a lot of drugs, we didn't have the financial literacy to be able to capitalize on properties in our communities that was only $10,000 or $20,000 that are now $1 million properties. So when we look at how we talk about gentrification, there was already writing on the wall that when you go back to value history where grandparents were buying property at $5,000, brownstones in the South End, $5,000, $10,000. Them same brownstones are 2.8, 2.8, 1.7, and you see that same energy transitioning from Boston to Brockton and now Fall River. So if we're not looking at how we build human equity and equity as a race, they'll have us tied in to just focusing on racism.
Well, let me jump in real quick. I know it's a lot to touch on. You guys were going pretty good. I like that. First thing is I was looking at, we're speaking to the masses, so we definitely have people in different states that's watching this video. So I just want to explain to them what South Boston, I know we've been saying South Boston High, and then a good point is that Nikki just touched on shit like Mecco School. South Boston was a public school that's in the south of Boston, where it's predominantly a white neighborhood. Most of us are from Roxbury, Dorchester, things of that nature. And you could Google the South Boston busing situation. All you got to do is type that in from the 70s. They'll show you different videos. But it wasn't a Mecco school. It's a public school that was in South Boston. And it's just like a normal high school, but it was in a white neighborhood where they were bringing guys from the inner city, black kids from the inner city out to a school in South Boston. So that's why we said South Boston High School. So that's one thing I just wanted to, make sure that we touched on, because not everybody knows what South Boston High School is. Now, back to the community programs and blacks helping out blacks. I think that there's always been programs, at least that I know of. There's always been things for the inner city, whether they were places like I know and like JP, they used to have the thing called the Cave. Like after school, you could go there and they were teaching you photography, landscaping, different things that they were tutoring the youth after school, and they gave you like a free dinner type of thing. So that was a big thing, especially when you didn't have a lot at home. Definitely Mission Hill, Orchard Park, every facility, we always had community programs. And we have, like you mentioned, like a Jeff Bynum, rest in peace to Edna Bynum, Jeff's mom, who actually has a park named after her down in Orchard Park, too. So we have these individuals, rest in peace Lenny Jackson, who was a big part of the youth programs and what have you. And if you go back and watch a video that I have out here with a guy named Charlie Rose, who's the Dean of Students over at City Year, that's a big program that's out here in Boston. But he was a big part and started the youth program that actually ran, I think it was called BYC, Boston Youth Community, something like that, where he actually had Lenny Jackson working for him, and I met him around the age of 13. And Charlie Rose is a white guy, so if you see this video, what have you, go back and watch the Charlie Rose interview. That's a really good interview. So I was going to speak on how, there are some racism going on. There are some white. So I really think that there's a lot more systemic here in Mass, myself, at least from what I experienced. Like you said, getting jobs, not getting promoted and things of that nature. You having an interview and things of that nature. But I will say, like, the person I am today and how I was able to get my education was through some very great white people, like rest in peace John O'Connor, who was financially stable, was able to help me get back into college or what have you, to help guide me get through Clark University. Charlie Rose actually introduced me to him. A big mentor in my life that was showing me different ways. So, like, as an inner city, cat that was looking at society as, okay, white is dominant and white is hard to obtain their success, and like this is all we can be, or sports, drugs, and entertainment. We didn't have lawyers walking through the projects. We didn't have doctors walking through the projects. So to see that there was the other side, like to even go on different camping trips, ski trips, like showing us other sides of the world was, based off of some of these youth programs. I know there's one I'm not really, I know I live in Brockton now, but the mayor that I had, I'll go back and watch the potential mayor. He was up on one of our podcasts and he was speaking to several of the programs, but we met him through one of the programs that he had with our son. So there are programs out there that are definitely trying to or showing youth that there are better ways, that there are different things to do. And although I want to make sure that, and at least I can speak for myself, but I think I speak on behalf of all of us, we're not saying that white people are racist or, this
All
isn't
white
like,
people are not
right.
racist.
All white people are racist. Like, and like, again, a lot of what I have today is because of meeting and dealing with, I like to say, good-hearted people because, again, Lenny Jackson, who wasn't, like she was black, a Kev Gaskins who's black or what have you, or Jeff Bynum who's black or what have you. But also, again, meeting the Charlie Rose, John O'Connor. And, these are the people that had, other opportunities for me, like to be able to get into a Clark University, which was one of the top 100 schools when I went to that college in the 90s. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear that, I think that there are just good-hearted people out there in the world, some of different races, colors, sizes, shapes, ages. And it do take, like you said, a vibe to kind of meet and deal with these people and iron it out. But also with that, we grew up with negative cats too. That was like, oh, grab this gun, sell these drugs and do those things. So it do take some internal review of yourself to see, like, what do you want in the world? Like, do I want to be the best drug dealer in the world? Do I want to be known as a killer and I want to kill as many people in the world? So, I think when you brought up how, they took, church out of our lives too. Like, we all kind of grew up, I would like to think that, great grandmother had us in church, grandmothers had us in church, moms had, whether you was going just Easter, Christmas, whatever it was, like, church was a big part of our lives. So, there's a lot too, and I don't want to get off track of just being black in Boston, but that's a part of, who I am, being black in Boston. I spent time, different states, what have you. Portsmouth, Virginia is one of the places. Shout out to VA. But yeah, even like what Tam was saying earlier about, the DC, Virginia area, that's where my mother and father's from, that DMV area. And so getting to experience that, I have a lot of family there, and to see how they were brought up and how they think, and have conversation with them. And growing up here in Mass, I like to say the North and that's the South, but you go down South, they say Virginia and DC is not the South. So I think that when you overall look at the whole picture, is racism just still major in the States? Yes. Is it more prevalent in Boston versus other places? Depends on how you look at it and what your experiences are. I think when you spend a majority of your time here, and then you start to see, if you go to another state and they're like, okay, you can't drive down this particular highway unless you have a gun on you, because there are going to be white people out here that just want to see a black face and they'll run you off the road and kill you. It's like, I don't have to think about that if I'm driving to Somerville. I don't have to think about that if I'm driving up to New Hampshire. So,
is there other places in Massachusetts that you might have to think about that, like Western Mass?
Not that I know of.
Okay, not that you know of, because I know my cousin who stayed out in Springfield said that some of those places out there is like, you want to be careful being seen at a certain time. So it's like, my point is to this is, most people think that it's the South that's so racist, and being that Massachusetts is so liberal that it's not racist, it is. And it's just as worse. Because I say it's just as worse is because down south it's more in your face, you know it, right? It's like somebody stabbing you in the face. But here it's silent. It stab you. It's the racism that will hug you, invite you to their house, have dinner with you. Like, racism down south, you're not coming in nobody who don't like black people's house.
But one thing
at all.
I want to be clear. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist in Mass. That's not. I just want to make sure that I was clear with that. I didn't want to make people think that. All right. Did you have a comment over there, audience member?
Yeah, it's not that it doesn't exist here. It's shown in a different way.
Right.
Fact.
Like, because I believe that there is a higher percentage of black people that are still living in some form of poverty, it's easy to be racist towards them and they not see it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for example, I know when the cannabis movement came, and there were going to be dispensaries, and they were talking about different funding and different this and different programs. They really were trying to encourage black people to be a part of it. But then when you peel back the layer of that onion, you find out it's a little bit, different rule set, that people have to meet. Like, the funding may be there somewhat, but all of the red tape that you got to jump over to get there. Right. So I think it's just in different ways. And I think, honestly, if, a lot of black people weren't able to get a lot of the government benefits, wouldn't be here. I think there's a lot of people that were born and raised in Massachusetts that stay here, that live in those impoverished conditions because all of the benefits they get from living here. You know, the welfare, the food stamps, the medical, and all of that, and they just got accustomed to that lifestyle
Comfortable.
and got comfortable.
Fact.
So I really think that, you know, Boston does have has its good and it also has its bad. I'm not saying that the whole, you know, Massachusetts, but I think that a lot of people just automatically assume because the South has such a rich history of racism in your face that that's what people associate it to, but don't see how they're being, you know, depicted in the North. It's very different here. It's very cold here, and unfortunately, I feel coming from a southern state and coming here, it just feels like the attitudes of my own people sometimes is, I got mine, you got to get yours.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And there is no teamwork.
No.
And it's always some form of a scam, you know, that somebody always want to take something and, you know, just the getting together and flourishing within a community and making things work. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that is really there like that.
Wow, you know what? To piggyback off of that, I totally agree. Like, I would definitely say, being more from being up north majority of my life, like when I was down south or what have you, we are, let me get mine and you got to get yours. Like, so if I'm down south and I'm like, okay, guys, like, oh, hey, let's do this together, or, you know, I don't have this, like, can you help me out? Like, that idea was so far removed, like, when you're from up here. Like, you know, it's kind of like, all right, we all going out, or, you know, okay, we all pitching in. We all got to go get it however way you can get it. Like, you need to show up. Like, that old, let me hug my brother and, like, you know, I got your back. That, you know, let me babysit your kids because I'll be home anyway. That attitude ain't really here like that. Like, in the Nova, like, listen, well, you shouldn't have took the job if you ain't have nobody to babysit your kids. Like, what am I supposed to do? I know I'm sitting home every day, all day, collecting a check, but you ain't about to intervene. I watch the news all day. Like, I watch my TV shows all day. I can't be running around watching kids. So I think that I've seen that more in the South. We're like, listen, your kids is my kids. More of a community aspect with being in the South. I could definitely agree with you on that. We're definitely more fast moving and, you know, let me get mine and you got to get yours. I'm not saying all, because I never say all, everything, all the time, but I definitely feel like that's more here and up north.
I think when you factor in the power dynamics, it's an eternal mechanism that compromises a lot of the power dynamics for us to be able to work together, and because you don't know what another person's going through, and we lack the ability to demonstrate some decency or transparency, a lot of us as Black people have found unhealthy coping mechanisms, and with those coping mechanisms, many of us don't step outside of the box because of pride to ask for help. Now, because Boston functions in silos and cliques, what's funny about the modernized situation of Boston right now, if you make yourself available, people will respond. But then, because of our trust issues, we have a lot of internal healing things that we need to heal from that makes it difficult, based on how some of us have grown up, to even ask for help. So I'll get what I got, and I'll hide. But I know that I need more. I know my kids need access to more. That risk factor of taking a risk and realizing that, you know, the word efficacy, regardless of all the challenges I've been through, I know I can still get it done. And hopelessness is real.
Yes,
You know, that hope shot of knowing that I can still get it. It ain't a bootstrap theory. It's just that fear of identifying people that are like-minded. and the disappointment that we've experienced from family, from the community. Sometimes it's difficult to want to take a risk and say that I can still. There's somebody out there like a Charlie Rose. There's somebody out there that's willing to be able to develop these relationships with that a lot of us won't go fishing for. You know, that self-defeating feeling of feeling like everything around me done let me down. It's that's a hard place to bounce back from. You know, and that's where that spirituality came in for a lot of our grandparents that a lot of us don't have. We don't have that same mental toughness not to give up. It's easy to give up, but it's a hell of a journey to bounce back. So, you know, hopefully, as we people will see this and will hear some of the things that's being shared and identify people around you that are like-minded, people around you that you're inspired to be, and give yourself permission to be able to say, can you tell me a little bit of what you did and how you did it?
My man, we couldn't end it on a better note. You know what? So we definitely want to do this as always, man. Mask Uncovered Podcast, man. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure y'all tune in to the next video. Just want to definitely say rest in peace again to Lenny Jackson.
Rest in peace.
There's some people out there like in all neighborhoods, shape, forms, and if you could touch anybody, whether you coaching, pulling somebody to the side at a job. I ain't gonna get into the conversation I had earlier with my sister about some black individuals working at your job and look at you like you don't even exist. But that's a different story for a different day. So I want to sign off. Y'all want to give any social media out? I just want to say see y'all at the next podcast. We definitely gonna have Nikki with a business ventures coming up soon. You're gonna see her face here and there. Stan, as always, it's a pleasure to always have you on part of the podcast. You always bring wealth, knowledge, and everything to anything we talk about. And I appreciate your time. Nikki, I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
The audience, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
For being the love of my night. So, y'all, as always, man, tuning out, man.
Peace.